Listen, we got breaking news in the NBA right now. The New York Knicks, they have signed Jordan Clarkson from the Utah Jazz. He will be reuniting with his teammate from back in the days and Josh Hart. It almost makes me feel like they should have completed the trifecta with Lonzo Ball, but it is what it is. But he is expected to sign with the Knicks after clearing waivers and the buyout and all that good stuff. We all know what that's all about. Um, this is gonna be special, for the New York Knicks. The Jazz forfeiting some of his $14.3 million salary. That way, he was able to hit free agency. Um, um, Sources close, said that he will sign with the Knicks on a veterans minimum deal, saving New York its mid-level exception by going that route. A source said Knicks plan on targeting the front court player in free agency. So they are not finished. Maybe a guy like Al Horford, he a champion. He's still out there. We're going to find out. Make sure you subscribe to Flight Sports for more news updates and more. Clarkson, a veteran right now. He's 33. He played, some of his best basketball. He was out in Utah putting it up. He was the sixth man of the year back in 2021. He shot a respectable 44% shooting. He averaged 20 points per game. That was about, pardon me, that was 3 seasons ago. So, bottom line is, this is a guy who produces instant offense. Um, a poor man's J.R. Smith, you know, um, maybe a poor man's Nick Young to a certain degree. But he's a guy who is going to be reliable for the way the New York Knicks are trying to play this upcoming year. Right now, we don't know who's going to be the coach for the New York Knicks. Um, I'm hearing Mike Brown now. He went through his second meeting. So clearly, there's some progress there being made. Mike Brown, I'm not thrilled, but he did make some improvements ever since he was the coach of LeBron James. He sat next to Steve Kerr for some time, so maybe it's time for him to come back and maybe take the mantle. The Knicks are pretty much running out of all options. They don't have many options, so they have to um, make a decision here on where they're moving. Um, but whoever comes in is going to have to utilize the bench, and what better player, to bring in than Jordan Clarkson? I think that's a guy who's going to be able to come off the bench for you and give you something. It's times where the Knicks, where they wasn't able to get things done. Clarkson this past season, he averaged 16 points per game, shooting 40%, 36 from three. So, the Knicks, they need a player who can put the ball in the hole, and not always rely on Brunson, relying on Cat, because at times they need some relief. And Clarkson's going to be able to come in and give them quick points, easily, and we haven't had that in a while. Um, the Knicks are gonna. There's no easy pathway to the NBA Finals. I know that everybody wants to crown the Knicks, as this title, threat. Yes, they are to a certain degree, but you still have to, pay homage to these other teams that's out there. It's not going to be easy. The Knicks have their work cut out for them. You see what Atlanta is doing. You see what some of these other teams are, putting around their basketball squads, to be competitive. And the Knicks, they have to stand pat. They can't just fall back like, oh man, we should have been in the finals. Indiana, they're not gonna be who they're gonna be. So we just gonna walk to the finals. No way in hell. You still got Milwaukee that's out there. Last time I checked, Giannis is still one of them dudes, and the list goes on out east. So everybody's gonna have to roll their sleeves up for the Knicks. Right now, we don't know who's at the helm, but we do know they're gonna get a coach. They at the helm really is Leon Rose. That's how much faith they have in Jalen Brunson. He's gonna be able to hold the locker room down. Leon Rose is holding down the front office. So it is continuity and good synergy, believe it or not, going through New York City. But I do think they miscalculated this search. I do think they got on a high horse a little bit, where they thought they just was going to be able to get anybody, anybody was going to take the job, which I think they possibly would have, but they targeted coaches that was already, in position. And that's not going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy pull, where you're going to get a guy out of contract, and the people who they tried to get Jason Kidd for crying out loud. They just made a trade. They're getting Cooper Flag. What does that say for the direction of Dallas if they let go of Jason Kidd? You know, he's there to coach Kyrie Irving, AD, and now their number one pick. So you kind of leave Dallas in shambles there. And a lot of these coaches, they use the Knicks as leverage. You see what happened. The guys got read up, so I think it's crazy, how this happened. The Knicks, I guess, was a benefit to all of these teams, in this search. But I hope Thibodeau can land on his feet, because if it wasn't for Tom Thibodeau, the New York Knicks wouldn't even be in position right now. He revitalized this city. He revitalized this roster. He galvanized the troops. He did almost what Mark Jackson did, in Golden State, bringing a whole city, a whole team together. He did that. And you talking about blowing game one, and look what we have here. So Thibodeau, at the very least, should have went to the finals. And I think that if he would have went to the finals, I don't think the Knicks could have fired him, because look what he did, whether win, lose, or draw. But I think if he would have got to the finals, I think they would have beat Oklahoma City. I think people underestimated the New York Knicks. Indiana pushed them to the limit. But the Knicks, man, they just needed a little bit more scoring. And I think that they're getting that. I think they're getting more dynamic at the bench. I think they're bringing in a former sixth man of the year. So I think that they got to beat up on the teams that they know they're gonna beat up on, and hopefully their resume against some of these teams that are really good doesn't plummet like it did last year. Hopefully they could beat some of these top teams in the regular season. But I like this move. You see Cleveland, they got Lonzo, so you got to look out for teams like Cleveland, Atlanta, Orlando. These teams potentially could swoop through on the New York Knicks. So they got to be diligent and keep making moves in their own right. I think it's another move to be made for New York City. Let's get in the comment section. Make sure you hit the like button. If you're new, most definitely hit the subscribe button. You already know what it is. It's Flight Sports TV, New York City. Stand up. You already